Talk Point again on Lagos Television, and we're glad that you can join us again. My name is Omololu Rosowo. On Talk Point today, we'll be looking at the enforcement of fundamental human rights in Nigeria. Of course, the 1999 Constitution, which we are using currently, speaks to the rights of every Nigerian, irrespective of tribe, race, or gender. Some of them include the right to life, the right to security, rights to accommodation, freedom of expression, and a whole lot more. That's what we'll be looking at today, and I have two people that will be discussing that with me. To my immediate right, I have Nelson Ekujumi, a civil affairs commentator and also a human rights activist.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yes, to my extreme right, I also have somebody that is familiar with us. He's also a legal practitioner. He's Celestine. Celestine, how are you doing?
I'm okay. Thank God we are enjoying the new Nigeria.
Yes, it's nice having you guys on Top Point. Let me quickly start with Nelson Ekujumi. What's your own assessment of the human rights in Nigeria when we look at the pre-democracy era? When I say pre-democracy era, we're looking at before we got democracy in 1999.
Well, thank you very much. If you look at human rights, you're talking about a wide area of coverage. You are talking about the right to life, the right to education, the right to employment, the right of access to, the basic things of life. If you look at our journey so far, I can say while we have made progress with regards to some of these rights, vis-a-vis under the civilian administration, unlike under the military juntas.
Let's look at that military period. I know it was terrible at that period, and people were not happy with what happened. So before 1999, we had some issues with killings and trampling, on getting journalists jailed and stuff like that.
Yes, the major clampdown under the military era was the right to expression. The right to life was also under threat. But some other basic rights, we could say we made appreciable progress. But coming to civilian administration, we can see that the right to expression has become unhindered. But the right to life has been endangered more because of insurgency and terrorism. Because we didn't have insurgency and terrorism under the military rule. We had it under the civilian administration. So the right to life became more emasculated under the civilian administration because of the insecurity that is bedeviling us even till now. But the freedom of expression and some other rights have become enhanced, even though a lot of our people don't seem to know that there's a thin line between freedom of expression and the consequences that could follow.
Okay, you're going to give us more insight into the thin line because we need to talk more on it. Celestine, what's your own take in this regard?
Well, first of all, good afternoon, Nigerians. I'll first of all start with the United Nations expectation on when you talk about human rights, because we have a universal Declaration of Human Rights that was established, that was in 1948 in Paris. December 10th of December 1948 in Paris. And in that declaration, you are talking about Article 217, Schedule 3, where you talk about some basic, there are 30 declarations or articles in that particular schedule, where 30 declarations or articles that the United Nations is expected that every country or nation state is supposed to guarantee as right of people that live on that stays under such state. And Nigeria, in our own wisdom and understanding, we are only privy to 14. If you go to, if you look at Chapter 4 of our Constitution, starting from Section 33 to 46, it talks about 14 guaranteed rights. If you go from 14 to 30 that the United Nations have declared, you will see that it's a far cry to what the expectation of universal guarantee right is. Nigeria have 14 out of 13, or that the United Nations is expected that every country should be privy to. But if you look at it from that angle, it's a far cry to what the expectation of the United Nations is all about. But when you get to Nigeria, let's talk about Nigerian standard now that we have seen and we have agreed to abide with. Is still at the nursery stage. When you look at everything happening around you, you ask yourself, many people don't even understand. Many Nigerians have not even read fundamental rights. They just know that, or many people know or hear there's what we call fundamental human rights. None of them, many people have not even read that particular portion of the Constitution to know their rights. And at times you see yourself having problem defending people's rights. Sometimes if you can't defend what people don't understand. So even government on their own side are not even publicizing this thing to the level where people understand, because your right stops where your right stops where my own starts. So there's always a friction. That's why you see people now. Some are taking to social media to administer their rights. Some are using also kind of expression to enforce that right. But ideally, it's not supposed to be in that manner. People should understand that. Let me give you an instance of this defamation of character and all whatnot that is rampant now in the system. You know, under military regime, you can't even make that kind of statement. That's you dare not make. But now people are now making, defaming people with impunity.
So can we say that is another dividend of
it's
democracy?
It's abuse of rights.
Yes, abuse of rights, but dividend of democracy, because during the military junta, you dare not do that.
But
now you can express yourself and you can talk.
No, it is not a dividend of democracy. It is about the fact that.
Can you just speak louder?
Okay, it's not about the abuse of rights. It's not a dividend of democracy. It's just the exuberance of our people, because we have a democratic system. You know, during the military days, there were things you dare not say. You know, definitely you'll be picked up. And you could be picked up and you could become missing for life. We have an example among one of our journalists, Bagauda Kato. Till tomorrow morning, nobody knows what happened to that young man. He was just weeks away. Until tomorrow, we are still looking for him. So, people have taken the liberty to believe that because it's a democracy in which rights are guaranteed, there's no more draconian laws in place. You are governed by, laws made by representatives of the people. You now feel you can abuse those rights. Meanwhile, every right comes with duties and obligations. No right is absolute. The thin line between the freedom of expression is the libel is the defamation that comes with it, because you have a right to voice an opinion. Does not mean you should voice an opinion that will injure the feelings or could cause public unrest. That would be violating, that would be breaching even that freedom of expression. So under the civilian administration, we have seen that the space for expressing opinion has become more widened, but ignorantly. Like he has rightly said, people go on social media. As I'm sitting down here, I've had cases where people malign my name. And I'm like, all because you claim to be an activist. And I say, look, activism is not anarchism. You can't say because you're an activist, you have the freedom. For example, look at when we go on protests. I'm a product of protest. The moment you bring people to protest ground, okay, we are protesting to government house. Immediately we set off. Within 100 meters, protesters want to start exhibiting acts that are criminal in nature.
So trying to hijack that protest.
It's not even about hijacking. They believe once you are exercising your rights, you are free to do and undo. That the woman selling beverages or snacks, they will start picking it without paying.
Which is wrong.
Which is not really wrong. It's a criminal act. That is stealing.
Okay, you're about saying something.
Well, I want to state clearly here that, in line with the question you asked, or how far we have gone, as far as I'm concerned, Nigeria is still lagging behind the government on their own part are even, well, I would say that they are sleeping on their duty. Because, like for instance, we have a grant, the most essential part of this aspect of this right is right to life. Right to life. Only other one that is coming up there is just to guarantee, provide what makes life worth living. Those are the ones that are just there to augment life itself. But right to life is a fundamental right that is all-encompassing. So, but you ask yourself, how many times have the government picked interest in the life of individual? Now, in the United Nations aspect of it, they are talking about security. They mentioned that when you talk about life to life, you talk about life to adequate security, schooling, and all whatnot. But in Nigerian context, we just talk right to life. The question now is, that life you are talking about, how secured is that life in Nigerian context?
Yeah, Nelson said something earlier that I want us to expatiate on. He said there's a thin line. I need us to know that more so that we can learn, the viewers can learn.
What we are saying about the thin line in freedom of expression is that freedom of expression or that right that you have, which is guaranteed or enshrined in the Constitution, is not absolute. That is the thin line between that right and the law. That right you have to hold an opinion and express it. That the thin line between that right and your expressing it is that you must exercise it with absolute responsibility. You must not exercise that right with the intention, either consciously or unconsciously, to endanger public safety. Because if rights are absolute, then somebody can just wake up and decide to, take poison. But you and I know for free that even that right, it is the state that gives you that right. If any attempt of you for you to undermine that right, the state has a responsibility to arrest you and prosecute you for even attempting to take your own life. So it tells you clearly that right is not absolute. The right to life does not give you the liberty to do and undo with your life. Because I have a right to life does not mean, I can decide to go on the expressway and stand in the middle of the road, that any vehicle will not pass. I will be arrested for attempted suicide.
Yeah.
So people must recognize that the rights the fundamental rights we are talking about are rights enshrined in our Constitution, and they encompass a whole lot. But like he has rightly said, the most fundamental of that right is the right to life. Every other right is secondary to the right to life, because if there's no life, you cannot exercise all of those other rights. The right, the right to work, the right to associate, the right to education, the right to access to medical care and what have you. So these are rights that the Constitution has given us. But those rights have other layers. And those layers are that this is the way to follow to enjoy those rights. If you don't toe that path, for example, in the freedom of expression, if you go about because you have a right to say or to publish, which is libel, to publish what injures the character of a person or a group, they have a right to take you to court. So the court will not say, because you have a right to expression, then whatever you say, you can just say whatever you
do any libelous.
Yes. So
now,
the right.
Yes, and let me come to the lawyer in the house now, Celestine. Under the Constitution, everybody has freedom of expression, but there is limitation to what you can do. Just like Ip mentioned now, there are libelous issues which most Nigerians, or some Nigerians would say, which could also lead to slander. Now, in situations like this, do they have right to just talk anyhow to anybody without them, or defame anybody without being cautioned?
The word caution depends on who is offended, who the victim is. A victim might choose any option he wants to adopt to enforce his own right, because that right you abuse is trampling up on somebody's right again. So that person now have an option to decide how to handle your matter. If you decide to use the police, for instance, we have federal act that prohibits defamation. Now, the Defamation Act Now, while you have state laws, like Lagos have prescribed defamation, it made it a civil matter. Why the Federal Act is still talking about it's a federal offense, is a criminal offense. So now, at that instance, it depends on me. If I want to implement such enforce such rights, I can go civil on it, I can go criminal. That is, if I want to involve police in it, I can involve police. If I want to go for damages, I can go strictly to court on damages, demanding damages from you. It depends on how I want to go about it. If I want to give you a reasonable punishment through the state, we'll go through criminal. But if I want to give you, maybe I want to collect money from you in that regard, we'll go for that. But in the reasons of it, people don't understand all this. That's why I said social media is not helping matters here. We are moving into a state of anarchy if care is not taken. Because when people now decide to be enforcing their rights through social comments, it then means the conventional institutions that are empowered to handle such situations are now moribund. And that in that particular instance, it's all about free for all. You use your mouth and slander whoever you can. Do whatever you feel like doing. You are at liberty to do that. Well, and that is why the law should not be allowed. People should not be allowed to go scot-free when they infringe on people's rights. So the government is not helping matters here. As far as I'm talking about civil or whatever. The government is not helping matters here because there are not enough sensitization on air on all these issues. Apart from sensitization, like anyway, Lagos State is doing their own. What we are doing here is just part of sensitization. But ideally, I expected National Education Agency to come on board. A lot of issues happening in Nigeria now. I expected that agency to wake up from their slumber because a lot of things happening now, particularly social media. This content creating of a thing is now taking us to another level. If care is not taken, by the time you understand what the harm they have caused, imagine this prank issue of a thing. People play pranks with everything. And then they tell you it's a prank. Some people use that word allegedly. Allegedly. You are defaming somebody and you are using that word allegedly. And that information is coming from you. Using the word allegedly does not erase the information you are giving out. You claim that somebody is allegedly. So this aspect of content creating is not helping situation. And in a situation where the police clamps down on people, somebody will now start telling you he was a human rights before. Why is he not? See, human rights activism or whatever, celebrating that word does not change anything. What we should be celebrating is the act itself. Forget what is let's not forget. I know many people will tell you judiciary is failing, but all of us are Nigerians. The judiciary, there's no angel in the Nigerian Bar Association. There is no saint in Nigerian Bar. The past saint is Nigerian Bar Association. All of us are Nigerians. And if you say the judiciary is corrupt, you are corrupt too. All of us are corrupt. The whole system is upside down. But that does not mean that we will not be facing the realities. So for the fact that it's upside down, does that mean we will just fold our hands and allow people to step on people's toes for the fun of it? Any statement you make that you cannot substantiate, you that are sat,
then you must prove it.
If you are sat in a position, be ready to prove it. So it's not when police now, with evidence. It's not when police now call you to come and prove your case. You start telling people that you are an activist. Activism does not shield you from prosecution. You are not immune from prosecution.
Okay, yes, you were saying something.
I just want to add to what he has said that the social media, like he has rightly said, that is why some of us are strong advocates of regulating the social media. You know, the former Minister for Information and Culture then, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, made that statement that if care is not taken, the Third World War will be ignited from the social media because people just wake up and put up all stuff. And unfortunately, we live in a generation that do not think. Because I tell people, if I see any information, there are some basic questions I will ask before touching that information. But a lot of us, once it suits our bias,
send it.
You just continue to share. And when you ask, you tell you, there was one that somebody sent to my wife, and I saw that information. It was very provocative. And I said, this information you sent out, do you know the source? He said no. Do you know when it happened? He said no. Do you know the people involved? He said no. I said, please, this type of information is capable of igniting crisis in any society. Even if everybody is doing it, don't do it.
You that know what is
yes,
right should do the right
always
thing.
be guided by the four-way test of Rotary International. Is it the truth? If you cannot verify, ask people, send it to people close to you that please see this information I saw, help me check it out. But because of the
They are even fact checking.
no, maybe it doesn't even have
platforms.
maybe he's an illiterate, doesn't even have the knowledge of fact checking, you know. Let him or her send it to people he knows are more knowledgeable than him or her to help him in that, because people should recognize that your right is your responsibility, and the moment you infringe on another person's rights, that your rights could be abridged when the courts take this decision. Because like I said, why I told you that our rights are not absolute is because even the courts have a responsibility. The court can take away your right. Okay. If you are confined to prison now, your right to movement.
As we start to round up now, what do you think the National Human Rights Commission can do? Because they also have roles to play to ensure that things get better for the citizenry. Celestine.
Well, National Human Rights Commission, they are there to protect people's life. Their major role is enforcing this fundamental human rights. But incidentally, most of the people that even claim they infringe on their rights. Let me give you a typical example. Police will invite somebody for questioning. He will ignore police invitation. By the time police comes to arrest him, and you know when you ignore invitation, at that instance, you have already breached your rights. So if police invites you, granting of bail is now a different question, because you have tampered with that integrity test. An honorable person is supposed to come upon invitation. But when you now refuse to come, police can now deny you bail because they are scared of you coming to follow your matter.
That you could jump
At that instance, that the person will go to court trying to enforce fundamental human rights, freedom of liberty and all whatnot. So you see that going to so we abuse every privilege given to us here in this country, and it's a big problem. So I expect the National Electoral Agency to come on board, start educating people, flash up programs. It's not no matter how small it looks, flash up jingles that will make people understand that they have rights, but your rights stops at where my own starts.
Okay, yeah, and Nelson, I want you to add to that too. Then are the lawyers also doing what is right? Because some will support negativity, some will support positivity in the face of wanting to defend.
Well, it is not about lawyers supporting negativity or positivity. It's about lawyers being how do I put it now? Being practitioners in the temple of justice. They have different training. Their own is to voice their opinion on an issue, that this is what I think the law says about it. So it's not about negativity or positivity. It is the court that will interpret that issue, whether it aligns with the provisions of the law. The lawyer will advance his own argument. You know, lawyers advance argument. Lawyer does not give judgment. Making a judgment or giving an order, is that power is vested in the court. But majorly, like he has rightly said, I think we as Nigerians, I think we should devise programs where we educate Nigerians. Because, for example, I tell people, somebody will going on the road, policemen have stopped his friend, he saw a friend whose car was stopped by the policeman, or even on bike. Yes. And the next thing, he comes down, what has he done?
Yes.
I said that is an abuse.
Yes, I'm afraid time is no longer on our side. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for being part of Talk Point. Nelson Ekujumi, thank you for being part of Talk Point.
Thank you very much.
I also want to thank you, Celestine Ilo, for also being joining us on Talk Point.
It's a pleasure being
Yes, on that note, we've come to the end of Talk Point. 767 and 112 still remain the lines to always quote in times of emergency. Stay out of trouble. Ensure that you do what is right so that Lagos and indeed Nigeria can get better. I am Omololu Rosso. See you some other time.
This is Lagos, the heartbeat of Nigeria.